The afternoon sun streamed through our kitchen window as I rummaged through my purse, looking for my wallet. James stood by the door, anxiously checking his watch. He needed a new suit for a client meeting tomorrow, and the mall would be closing in a couple of hours. "Babe, have you seen my wallet?" he called out, patting his pockets again. I found mine instead and pulled out my credit card. "Here, just use mine," I said, handing it to him without a second thought. After 3 years of marriage, our finances were practically merged anyway. "Just don't go overboard, okay? And maybe pick up some takeout on your way back?" James smiled, kissed my cheek, and slipped the card into his wallet. "You're the best, Emma. I'll be back before dinner." That simple gesture, handing over that small piece of plastic, would end up being the match that lit a fire I'd been trying to ignore since the day I married into the Preston family. James and I met at a publishing house in Boston where we both worked. Me in editing, him in marketing. Our relationship bloomed quickly, and within 18 months, we were engaged. His family had seemed pleasant enough during our brief encounters, formal. Sunday dinners at their Beacon Hill brownstone, the occasional holiday gathering. His mother, Eleanor Preston, was always impeccably dressed and unfailingly polite. But there was something in her eyes when she looked at me. Something calculating that made me uneasy. "You're being paranoid," James would tell me whenever I'd bring it up. "Mom's just protective. She'll warm up to you." 3 years later, and that warmth had yet to materialize. If anything, the chill had deepened. 3 days after lending James my card, we were sitting at Eleanor's mahogany dining table for what she called a casual family brunch. I should have known something was off the moment we walked in. Eleanor's brunches were usually understated. Affairs, French toast, mimosas, polite conversation about charity events and the neighbors' renovations. This one was different. The table was set with the good china, the kind that only came out for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Crystal glasses caught the light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the white tablecloth. The food was catered, not homemade, and a bottle of Dom Perignon was chilling in an ice bucket. "Mom, what's the occasion?" James asked as we took our seats. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "Can't a mother spoil her family once in a while?" That's when I noticed the shopping bags, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Tiffany, lined up against the wall like soldiers awaiting inspection. My stomach tightened. "Eleanor, you've been busy," I said, trying to keep my voice light. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I just felt like treating myself. Life's too short to deny yourself the finer things, don't you think?" Throughout brunch, she kept accidentally dropping hints about her shopping spree. The new curtains for the guest room were from some exclusive home store in New York. The bracelet on her wrist was just a little something she'd picked up yesterday. With each revelation, James's sister Caroline would shoot me sideways glances, a small smile playing at her lips. It wasn't until the dessert, some elaborate cake with gold leaf on top, that Eleanor finally dropped her bombshell. "Oh, Emma, darling," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she refilled her champagne. "I meant to tell you. I borrowed your credit card from James for a few little purchases." She laughed like we were sharing a joke. "You don't mind, do you?" The table went silent. James's fork clattered against his plate. "You what?" he said, looking between his mother and me. Eleanor patted his hand. "Now, don't look so shocked, dear. Emma and I are practically family. What's hers is yours, and what's yours is mine. Isn't that how it works?" She turned to me, her eyes glittering with challenge. "I'm sure Emma doesn't mind helping out her mother-in-law. Do you, Emma?" Every eye at the table turned to me. Caroline's smirk widened. James's father, Richard, suddenly became very interested in his coffee. James himself looked confused, embarrassed. My hands trembled under the table, but I kept my face neutral. "How much did you spend, Eleanor?" She waved her hand again, that dismissive gesture I'd grown to hate. Oh, just a few things here and there. Nothing to worry about. A hot flush crept up my neck, but I forced myself to smile. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, standing up. "I need to use the restroom." As I walked away, I heard Caroline whisper something that made Eleanor laugh. I didn't turn around. I didn't run. I walked calmly until I was out of sight, then practically sprinted to the guest bathroom, locked the door, and pulled out my phone. My banking app loaded, and there it was, a series of charges totaling $35,182.76. Designer clothes, jewelry, home decor. Even a goddamn spa retreat. I sat down on the edge of the bathtub, my legs suddenly weak. This wasn't just crossing a boundary. This was obliterating it. And the way she'd announced it so publicly, so smugly, this wasn't impulsive. This was calculated. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, face flushed, eyes bright with unshed tears of rage. But I wouldn't give Eleanor the satisfaction of seeing me break down. That's what she wanted. That's what this whole spectacle was designed to do. To humiliate me, to establish dominance, to show me my place in the Preston hierarchy. Not this time. Not with my money. I took a deep breath, splashed cold water on my face, and made a decision. Eleanor Preston had no idea who she was dealing with, but she was about to find out. I locked the bathroom door and slid down against it, my heart hammering in my chest. The marble floor felt cold through my thin summer dress, but I barely noticed. With trembling fingers, I opened my banking app again, hoping, praying, that I'd somehow misread the numbers. I hadn't. There they were, a parade of transactions spanning the last 2 days. Neiman Marcus, 8,473.29. Tiffany & Co., 5,1942 downstairs. Restoration Hardware, 12,654.87. And the list went on. My entire quarterly bonus, gone. Money I'd been saving for a writing retreat in Vermont, vanished. This can't be happening, I whispered to myself as I scrolled through the charges. Each swipe of my finger revealed another assault on my account. A spa weekend at Canyon Ranch, an antique vase from some boutique I'd never heard of, a custom throw pillow set that cost more than my first car. I took screenshots of everything, emailing them to myself as backup. Then I checked the timestamps. Some purchases had been made while I was sitting in editorial meetings, completely unaware that Eleanor was bleeding my account dry. I thought of her sitting in some high-end store, handing over my card with that smug little smile of hers. Had the salespeople asked for ID? Had she spun some story about borrowing her daughter's card? A soft knock on the door made me jump. "Emma, are you okay?" It was James. I quickly locked my phone. "I'm fine," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just a stomach thing. I'll be out in a minute. Mom's asking if you want coffee or tea with dessert." The audacity of that woman. Stealing thousands from me and then asking about my beverage preference like we were having a normal family meal. "Coffee's fine," I replied, buying myself more time. When I heard his footsteps retreat down the hall, I pulled out my phone again, this time to make a call. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Meredith Jacobson, attorney at law. Meredith had helped me set up prenuptial agreements before marrying James. Not because I didn't trust him, but because as a first-generation college graduate who'd worked her way up from nothing, I'd learned to protect what was mine. Eleanor had been furious about the prenup, calling it distasteful and a sign of mistrust. Looking back, I should have recognized that reaction for the red flag it was. Meredith answered on the third ring. "Emma, isn't it Sunday?" "It is, and I'm sorry to bother you," I said, keeping my voice low. "But I have an emergency." I explained what had happened, the card, the spending, Eleanor's public announcement of what she'd done. As I spoke, I could feel my initial shock crystallizing into something harder, colder. This wasn't just about money. This was a power play, a deliberate attempt to humiliate me in front of the entire family. "That's fraud, Emma," Meredith said when I finished. "Plain and simple. Your name is the only one on the account, correct?" "Yes. And I never gave permission for anyone except James to use it. And even with him, it was for a specific purchase." "Did she admit to using your card?" "In front of witnesses. The entire family heard her." "Good. That works in our favor." I could hear Meredith typing in the background. "Here's what I want you to do. First, call your credit card company as soon as you hang up. Report the card as compromised and dispute all the charges you didn't authorize." "All of them," I said, firmly. "Next, don't confront her yet. You're going to need documentation, receipts, the items themselves, any communications about the purchases. Can you get back home without raising suspicions?" I glanced at my watch. We'd been at brunch for almost 2 hours. I can say I have a deadline to meet. "Perfect. Get home, call the credit card company, and then email me all the documentation you have. I'll draft a formal letter demanding return of the items or repayment in full. And if she refuses, then we press charges for credit card fraud. Family or not, what she did is illegal, Emma." The bathroom suddenly felt too small, too warm. I stood up and splashed cold water on my face, careful not to smudge my makeup. I didn't want to give Eleanor any sign that she'd gotten to me. "I'll call you this evening," I told Meredith. "One more thing," she said before I could hang up. "Document everything from here on out. If she mentions the purchases again, record it if you can. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state for recordings, but if she's making these statements in a group setting where there's no expectation of privacy, you should be covered." I thanked her and ended the call, then stood in front of the mirror for a long moment, gathering myself. The woman who stared back at me looked composed, but I could see the fire in her eyes. Good. I'd need that fire. I took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and stepped back into the hall. I could hear laughter from the dining room, Eleanor's voice rising above the others, probably regaling everyone with stories of her shopping expedition. My shopping expedition, on my dime. As I approached, I caught the tail end of what she was saying. And the salesgirl was so helpful. She said the bracelet was the perfect choice for a woman of my distinguished taste. Caroline was examining the bracelet on Eleanor's wrist, a delicate gold chain with what looked like diamonds. My diamonds, technically. I slid back into my seat beside James. He squeezed my knee under the table, a silent question in his eyes. I gave him a reassuring smile and accepted the coffee his father handed me. "Feeling better?" Eleanor asked, not really caring about the answer. "Much," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. It was bitter, just like the words I was holding back. Eleanor turned her attention back to showing off her new jewelry, and I watched her perform for her audience. She had no idea what was coming. No idea that while she'd been spending my money, I'd been making calls that would ensure this was the last time she'd ever take advantage of me. I stayed at that table for another 45 minutes, smiling and nodding at all the right moments. I even complimented the bracelet, watching with grim satisfaction as Eleanor preened at the praise. Let her enjoy it while she could. When we finally made our excuses to leave, Eleanor hugged me at the door, her expensive perfume enveloping me in a cloud of sandalwood and entitlement. "We should do this more often," she said, patting my cheek. "It's so nice having you in the family, Emma." I smiled back, the picture of a dutiful daughter-in-law. It certainly has been revealing. As James and I walked to our car, I could feel something shifting inside me. The hurt and shock were still there, but they were being overshadowed by something else. Resolve. Eleanor had underestimated me. She thought my politeness was weakness, my professionalism a lack of backbone. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. Once in the car, James turned to me. "What was that all about? Did Mom really use your credit card?" I looked at him, measuring my words carefully. Yes, she did, without my permission. We'll talk about it at home. He frowned, clearly confused. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. It wasn't. I cut him off, my voice sharper than I'd intended. James, she spent over $35,000 of my money. His face went pale. That can't be right. I checked my account. I have the receipts. Every single purchase. He fell silent, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. I could see him struggling to process it, to find some explanation that would make his mother's actions acceptable. There wasn't one, and deep down, I think he knew it. As we drove home in silence, I made a mental list of what needed to be done. Call the credit card company. Email Meredith. Prepare for the confrontation that was coming. Eleanor Preston had declared war with my own credit card. Now it was my turn to respond. The drive home from Eleanor's house was tense. James kept opening his mouth like he wanted to say something, then closing it again. I stared out the window, watching Boston's brownstones blur past, my mind racing with plans and possibilities. When we finally reached our Somerville apartment, I immediately went to my desk while James hovered awkwardly in the doorway. Emma, I'm sure there's some explanation, he started, his voice strained. Maybe Mom thought I had permission to share the card with her, or... I looked up from my laptop. Did you give her my card, James? He hesitated. No, but... Then how did she get it? His shoulders slumped. She called yesterday saying she needed help ordering something online. I went over after work. My wallet was on her coffee table while I helped her with her computer. She must have taken it then. The betrayal cut deeper. Not just Eleanor, but James too, leaving my card where his mother could access it. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that he hadn't known what she would do. I need to make some calls, I said, alone. He nodded and left the room, closing the door behind him. First, I called the credit card company. The representative was sympathetic but firm. Since I had willingly given my card to my husband, they considered any use within the family as potentially authorized. They would investigate, but the process could take weeks. I hung up feeling frustrated but not surprised. Eleanor had calculated this well. Next, I emailed Meredith all the screenshots and details, then sat back in my chair, considering my options. I could confront Eleanor immediately, demand she return everything. But that would likely lead to denials, family drama, and possibly destroy any evidence I might need if this escalated further. No, I needed to be smarter than that, patient, strategic. I closed my laptop and went to find James. He was sitting on our couch, staring blankly at the muted TV. I've reported the card as compromised, I told him, sitting beside him but not touching. New ones will arrive in a few days. He nodded mutely. James, I need you to understand something. What your mother did wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. It was calculated. She took my card, spent my money without permission, and then announced it publicly to humiliate me. She wouldn't. She did. You were there. You heard her. He ran his hands through his hair, messing up the neat style he'd maintained for brunch. What are you going to do? I chose my words carefully. I'm going to handle it. But I need to know where you stand in this, James. This is about respect. For me, for our marriage, for boundaries. I need to know if you're with me. His eyes met mine, troubled but clear. I'm with you, Emma. Always. But she's my mother. And I'm your wife, the person you promised to put first. I reached for his hand. I don't want to make you choose, but I won't let this slide. Not this time. After a moment, he nodded. What do you need from me? Just don't warn her about what's coming. Let me handle this my way. He agreed, and we spent the rest of Sunday in a strange limbo, moving around each other carefully, the weight of what had happened hanging between us. I used the time to continue building my case, printing statements, organizing screenshots chronologically, even writing down exactly what Eleanor had said at brunch while it was still fresh in my memory. Monday morning, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. James left for his office with a quick, uncertain kiss goodbye. As soon as he was gone, I called Meredith again. "I've reviewed everything you sent," she said without preamble. "You've got a solid case for fraud, Emma. The question is whether you want to pursue formal charges or handle this privately." What would formal charges mean? Potentially, criminal prosecution. It would depend on the DA's office, but credit card fraud over $25,000 is a felony. At minimum, it would mean police involvement, statements, possibly court appearances. Thought about what that would do to James, to our marriage. And privately, we send a formal demand letter requiring return of all items purchased or repayment in full, with a deadline and clear consequences if she fails to comply. It gives her a chance to make this right before it escalates. Let's start there, I decided. But I want it clear that criminal charges remain on the table if she doesn't comply. I'll draft it today. How do you want it delivered? I thought, for a moment. I'll deliver it personally. After hanging up, I checked my email every few minutes until Meredith's draft arrived just after noon. It was perfect. Formal, unambiguous, with just the right hint of legal menace. I printed 3 copies. One for Eleanor, one for me, and one to keep sealed as evidence of what had been delivered. The rest of the day crawled by. I cleaned the apartment, more to keep my hands busy than because it needed it. I rehearsed what I would say when I faced Eleanor. I imagined different scenarios, her angry denials, tearful apologies, cold dismissals, and planned my responses to each. By the time James came home, I felt calmer, more centered. He looked exhausted, worry, lines creasing his forehead. "I saw Mom today," he said as he loosened his tie. "She acted like nothing happened. Invited us to dinner this weekend." "And what did you say?" "That we were busy." He hesitated. "Emma, maybe we should talk to her together. Try to work this out as a family." I shook my head. "This isn't a misunderstanding to work out, James. It's theft, and I'm handling it." He didn't push further, sensing my resolve. We ate dinner in relative silence, the TV providing background noise neither of us was listening to. Later in bed, he reached for my hand in the darkness. "I love you," he whispered. "Whatever happens, I love you." I squeezed his hand. "I know." The next morning, Tuesday, I dressed with care, a navy pencil skirt, white blouse, and the pearl earrings my grandmother had left me. Professional, powerful. I checked my bag 3 times to make sure the documents were there, then drove to Eleanor's Beacon Hill home. I knew her routine. Tuesdays were her Pilates class, followed by lunch with her friends at the Harvest Club. She'd be home by now, probably having tea in her sunroom, planning her next social event. I parked across the street and sat for a moment, steadying my breathing. This confrontation had been building for 3 years. Every snide comment, every backhanded compliment, every boundary crossed. But Eleanor had finally gone too far, and now she would face the consequences. As I walked up to her door, I noticed movement in the window. Caroline's distinctive red hair. Of course she was here, Eleanor's loyal lieutenant. Fine. Let her witness what was coming. I rang the doorbell and waited, my heart calm despite everything. When Eleanor opened the door, her smile faltered for just a moment before returning, a bit too bright, a bit too fixed. "Emma, what a lovely surprise. I was just having tea with Caroline. Won't you join us?" I smiled back, equally false. "Actually, Eleanor, I'd love to. We have some things to discuss. She stepped aside to let me in, her eyes tracking me warily now. The grand foyer of her home was just as I remembered. Marble floors, antique console table, family portraits lining the walls. The newest addition was a large crystal vase filled with fresh peonies. My peonies, bought with my money. "Is James with you?" she asked, glancing past me to the empty street. "No, this is between you and me." She led me to the sunroom where Caroline sat amid potted palms and wicker furniture, a china teacup in her manicured hands. Her eyebrows shot up when she saw me. "Well, look who's here," she drawled. "Little Miss Editor, shouldn't you be correcting someone's grammar right now?" I ignored her, taking a seat opposite Eleanor. "I won't be staying long. I just came to deliver this." I removed the envelope from my bag and placed it on the table between us. Eleanor stared at it, then at me. "What's this?" "Open it." She hesitated, then picked up the envelope, slicing it open with a nearby letter opener. Her eyes scanned the first page, widening slightly. The color drained from her face. "This is ridiculous," she said finally, her voice higher than usual. "A lawyer? Really, Emma?" Caroline stood and moved behind her mother, reading over her shoulder. Her expression shifted from curiosity to shock to anger. "You're threatening to press charges? Against family?" She turned to me, incredulous. "Are you insane?" "I'm protecting what's mine," I replied calmly. "Your mother stole from me, publicly, proudly, and now she has a choice to make." Eleanor's hand shook slightly as she set the papers down. "This was a misunderstanding. James said I could—" "No, he didn't." I cut her off. "And you know it. You took my card without permission, spent over $35,000, and then bragged about it at brunch. There's no misunderstanding here, Eleanor." She straightened in her chair, regaining some of her composure. "Well, I certainly don't have that kind of money lying around to repay you immediately. The Preston funds are tied up in investments, as you know. Then return the items, all of them, by Friday." "Return them?" Caroline scoffed. "Mother's already worn half of them. The stores won't take them back." I shrugged. "That's not my problem. The letter lays out your options quite clearly, Eleanor. Return everything, repay me in full, or I press charges for credit card fraud. You have until Friday at noon." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare. Think about what this would do to James, to our family name." "I've thought about it. Have you?" I stood up, gathering my bag. "I believe you still have time to make your Harvest Club reservation. Don't let me keep you." As I turned to leave, Eleanor called after me, her voice tight with anger. "This isn't over, Emma." I looked back at her, at this woman who had tried so hard to break me, to put me in my place. "You're right, Eleanor. It's just beginning." As I drove away from Eleanor's house, I felt oddly peaceful. The confrontation I dreaded for so long was finally in motion. Eleanor's smug certainty had cracked, revealing the panic underneath. She had underestimated me, assumed I would stay quiet, stay submissive. But I had spent my whole life being underestimated. By professors who thought a scholarship student couldn't keep up. By publishing executives who saw my working-class background as a liability rather than a strength. By Eleanor, who thought her social status gave her immunity. They had all been wrong. And now, Eleanor would learn just how wrong she had been about me. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The ball was in Eleanor's court now, and I had work to do. I couldn't afford to miss another day at Beacon Publishing, not with the Williams manuscript deadline looming. I was deep in edits when my phone buzzed. Eleanor's name flashed across the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message during my lunch break. "Emma, darling." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. Why don't we meet for coffee and discuss this like civilized people?" The Bluestone Cafe on Newbury tomorrow at 10? I'm sure we can sort this out without involving lawyers. The way she said the word made it sound like something dirty. I texted back a single word. Fine. That evening I told James about the meeting. He'd been walking on eggshells around me since Sunday, torn between loyalty to his mother and horror at what she'd done. Do you want me to come with you? He asked. I shook my head. This is between me and your mother. Besides, you have that client presentation tomorrow. He nodded, relief and guilt battling across his face. Just try to remember she's not always like this. There's got to be a reason. Don't. I cut him off gently. Don't make excuses for her, James. Not this time. The Bluestone Cafe was one of Eleanor's favorite spots. Expensive, exclusive, the kind of place where Boston's elite gathered to see and be seen. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner, away from the windows, but with a clear view of the entrance. I ordered a black coffee and waited. Eleanor swept in at 10:15, her typical passive-aggressive lateness. She wore a cream cashmere sweater and what looked like new diamond earrings. My diamond earrings, perhaps? Her eyes scanned the room before landing on me, and she made her way over, drawing glances from the other patrons. Eleanor Preston had that effect. She commanded attention without trying. Emma, thank you for meeting me, she said, settling into the chair across from me. She set her Hermes handbag on the table between us like a barrier. I've ordered us some of their lemon scones. They're divine. I didn't come here for scones, Eleanor. She sighed dramatically. No, you came with threats and accusations. Really, Emma, I expected better from you. The waiter arrived with her tea and a plate of scones. Eleanor thanked him warmly, then turned back to me once he was gone. Let's cut to the chase, she said, her voice hardening. What do you hope to accomplish with this little stunt? You're making a mountain out of a molehill. I took a sip of my coffee, maintaining eye contact. $35,000 isn't a molehill, Eleanor. It's fraud. Oh, please, she scoffed. It's not like you can't afford it. James tells me your publishing house gave you quite the bonus this quarter. So that's how she knew. James had mentioned my bonus in passing, proud of my accomplishment, and his mother had filed that information away, calculating exactly how much she could take. My finances are none of your business, I said. What matters is that you took my credit card without permission and spent a small fortune. Those are the facts. Eleanor stirred honey into her tea, the spoon clinking against fine china. The fact is, you're part of this family now, Emma. The Prestons take care of each other. When one of us has, the others are entitled to share in that abundance. That's not how marriage works, I said. That's not how family works. At least not in my family. Her lips curled into a sneer. Yes, well, we all know about your family, don't we? Your father, the factory worker, your mother, the waitress. Tell me, does it bother them that you've tried so hard to erase your roots? That you've clawed your way into a world that wasn't meant for you? The barb stung, as she'd intended it to. My parents had worked themselves to the bone to put me through college, proud of every step I'd taken up the social ladder they couldn't climb themselves. I'd never been ashamed of them. Ever. My parents taught me something yours apparently didn't, Eleanor. Respect. Boundaries. Basic human decency. She laughed, a brittle sound. Oh, save the working-class hero speech. We both know you married. James for his name, his connections. The least you could do is share the rewards of that investment. I married James because I love him, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. Something you might not understand. Eleanor's eyes flashed. I understand more than you think. I understand that my son could have had anyone. Someone from a good family, with the right background, the right connections. Instead, he brought home you. And now I'm supposed to welcome you with open arms? Pretend you belong here? I never asked you to pretend anything, I replied. All I asked was for basic respect. And when you couldn't give that, I asked to be left alone. But you couldn't even do that, could you? You had to push. You had to take what wasn't yours. She waved a dismissive hand. It's just money. It's not about the money. I leaned forward. It's about the fact that you thought you could take whatever you wanted from me without consequences. That you thought I was too weak, too intimidated by you to fight back. Something shifted in Eleanor's expression, a flicker of uncertainty, quickly masked. And now you're proving me wrong, is that it? With your lawyers and your threats? I'm protecting myself. Something I should have done from the beginning. Eleanor took a sip of her tea, then set the cup down with deliberate care. What exactly do you want, Emma? To humiliate me? To damage my reputation? To turn my son against me? I want what's rightfully mine. Every item you purchased returned or full reimbursement by Friday. And if I refuse? I reached into my bag and pulled out a small digital recorder. Then this recording of you admitting to taking my card without permission goes to the police, along with all the documentation my lawyer has already prepared. Eleanor's eyes widened. You're recording this conversation? Massachusetts is a two-party consent state for recordings, I acknowledged, which is why I'm telling you now that I'm recording. But the brunch? Where you announced to everyone what you'd done. That was a group setting with no expectation of privacy. Perfectly admissible. Her face flushed with anger. This is absurd. I'm family. Family doesn't steal from family, I said, turning off the recorder and returning it to my bag. You have until Friday noon. Everything returned or the full amount. In my account. Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her tea again. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Emma. The Prestons have connections in this city you can't even imagine. And you have no idea who you're dealing with, I countered. I wasn't born into privilege, Eleanor. I fought for everything I have. Did you really think I wouldn't fight for this? For a moment, we just stared at each other across the table. Two women from different worlds, locked in a battle neither had expected. Then, Eleanor's mask slipped back into place. The social matriarch, the Boston blue blood. I should be going, she said, gathering her things. I have a charity luncheon at the Gardner Museum. Of course you do. She stood, adjusting her pearl necklace. This isn't over, Emma. You said that yesterday, I reminded her. Yet here we are, one day, closer to Friday. She turned to leave, then paused. James will never forgive you if you go through with this. You know that, don't you? Blood is thicker than water. I looked up at her, suddenly feeling a wave of pity. That's where you're wrong, Eleanor. The full saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into. James chose me. Her face hardened. We'll see about that. As she walked away, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor, I didn't feel the triumph I'd expected. Just a deep sadness for James, caught between two women who both claimed to love him. But this wasn't about him. It was about boundaries, respect, and consequences. I paid for both our drinks and left the cafe, walking the few blocks to the Boston Public Garden. The spring day was beautiful, cherry blossoms drifting. On the breeze, couples rowing lazy circles in the swan boats. I found an empty bench and sat down, checking my phone. 3 missed calls from James. A text. Mom just called me. What happened? I sighed and typed back. I'll tell you everything tonight. Now I just had to wait for Friday, and hope that. Eleanor valued her reputation more than her pride. I got home before James that evening, giving me time to prepare. I changed into comfortable clothes, ordered his favorite pizza from Regina's, and opened a bottle of the Cabernet we'd been saving for a special occasion. This wasn't a celebration exactly, but it felt important to create a space where we could talk without the weight of office clothes and workday stress. When the door finally opened, I knew immediately that Eleanor had gotten to him. His shoulders were hunched, his expression troubled as he dropped his keys in the bowl by the door. "You're home early," I said, handing him a glass of wine. He accepted it wordlessly, taking a long drink before meeting my eyes. I couldn't focus at work, not after everything that's happening. I gestured to the couch. "Let's sit. The pizza will be here soon." "I'm not hungry," he said, but he sat down anyway, keeping a careful distance between us. "Mom called me crying this afternoon. She said you threatened to press criminal charges against her." "I did," I acknowledged. "But only if she refuses to return the items or repay me." He set his wine glass down hard enough that red liquid sloshed over the rim. "Jesus, Emma? Criminal charges? Against my mother? Do you have any idea what that would do to her? To our family name? Do you have any idea what she did to me?" I countered, working to keep my voice steady. "She stole my credit card. She spent over $35,000 without my permission. Then she announced it at brunch like it was something to be proud of. I know, and it was wrong, but there is no but, James. What she did was illegal. It was a deliberate attempt to humiliate me, to put me in my place, and I won't allow it." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen 1,000 times. "She says she thought I had given her permission to use the card, that it was a misunderstanding." "And you believe that?" I asked quietly. His silence was answer enough. Even James, who had spent a lifetime making excuses for his mother's behavior, couldn't stretch this one into something innocent. "She also said you've always resented her," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "That you've been looking for an excuse to drive a wedge between us." I took a deep breath, struggling against the wave of hurt his words caused. "Is that what you think?" "I don't know what to think anymore," he exploded, standing up and pacing the small living room. "My mother says one thing. My wife says another. I'm caught in the middle of a war I never wanted to fight." The doorbell rang, our pizza arriving. I went to get it, grateful for the momentary reprieve. When I returned with the box, James was standing at the window, staring out at the city lights. "I've never tried to come between you and your mother," I said, setting the pizza on the coffee table. "I've spent 3 years biting my tongue, overlooking her snide comments, her little digs about my background, my career, even the way I dress. I've accepted her intrusions into our lives, our home, our marriage. But this crosses a line, James. She stole from me." He turned to face me, his eyes red-rimmed. "She says she'll pay you back. She just needs time to liquidate some investments." "That's not good enough." "Why not?" he demanded. "If you get your money back, why push this further? Why involve lawyers and threats?" "Because this isn't about money," I was shouting now, the careful control I'd maintained since Sunday finally cracking. "It's about respect. It's about boundaries. It's about the fact that your mother has been undermining me, undermining us, from day one, and you've let her." The accusation hung in the air between us. James looked stricken, as if I'd slapped him. "I've let her," he repeated softly. "Yes," I said, my voice breaking. "When she criticizes my clothes, you say she's just old-fashioned. When she excludes me from family events, you say it's an oversight. When she treats me like I'm beneath her, you say she needs time to adjust. You've made excuses for her behavior for 3 years, James. And look where it's gotten us." He sank back onto the couch, head in his hands. "I didn't want to choose," he said, his voice muffled. "I never asked you to," I replied, sitting beside him but not touching. "I never wanted you to cut her out of your life. I just wanted you to stand with me when she crossed the line. And I haven't been doing that. No." We sat in silence for a long moment, the unspoken truths of our marriage finally laid bare. "What happens now?" he asked finally. Your mother has until Friday to return everything or repay me. If she does, that's the end of it. Legally, at least. And if she doesn't? I met his gaze steadily. Then I'll file charges. I won't back down on this, James. Not even for you. He nodded slowly, something shifting in his expression. Not anger anymore, but a kind of sad resolve. I should have done better by you, he said. I should have seen what was happening. We both should have, I acknowledged. But we can't change the past. We can only decide what happens next. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it. I'm with you, he said. Whatever happens with my mother, I'm with you. Relief flooded through me, so intense it was almost painful. I hadn't realized until that moment how afraid I'd been that this would be the breaking point for us. That when forced to choose, James would side with the family he'd known his whole life over the wife of 3 years. I love you, I whispered. I love you too. He squeezed my hand. And I'm sorry. Not just for this, but for all of it. For every time I didn't stand up for you, didn't protect you from her. I don't need protection, I said. I just need a partner, someone who sees me clearly and stands with me. I see you, he said, his voice strengthening, and I'm standing with you now. We talked late into the night, the pizza growing cold and forgotten. James called his mother twice, but she didn't answer. He left messages saying he knew what had happened, that he'd seen the credit card statements, and that she needed to make this right. Not just for my sake, but for their relationship as well. Around midnight, he received a text from Caroline. Mom's devastated. Hope you're happy destroying our family over money. Always knew she was a gold digger. James showed me the message, then deleted it without responding. She's always been Mom's attack dog, he said wearily. Ever since we were kids. It's not your fault, I told him. You didn't create this situation. Your mother did. He nodded, but I could see the guilt weighing on him. Growing up in the Preston household had left its marks. The constant expectation to maintain appearances, to put family loyalty above all else, to never air dirty laundry in public. Breaking those unspoken rules was harder for him than I could fully understand. The next day, Thursday, passed intense anticipation. James went to work but texted me throughout the day. No word from Eleanor, no sign that she was planning to comply with my demands before the Friday deadline. Maybe I should try calling her again, James suggested when he got home. Give her space, I advised. She needs to make this decision herself. We were eating dinner when the doorbell rang. James looked at me, eyebrows raised. I shrugged. We weren't expecting anyone. He went to answer it while I cleared the dishes. From the kitchen, I heard the door open, but no voices. When James didn't return after a minute, I went to check. He stood in the doorway, staring down at a pile of shopping bags on our welcome mat. Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Tiffany, all the brands I'd seen on Eleanor's statement. The items were being returned, but Eleanor herself was nowhere to be seen. No apology, just the silent admission of defeat. James carried the bags inside, setting them on the couch. We went through them together, checking each item against the list I'd compiled from my credit card statement. Most things were there, still in their original packaging, tags attached. A few items were missing, the spa weekend deposit naturally, and a silk scarf that had probably already been worn. She's returning most of it, James said, a note of hope in his voice. That's something, right? I nodded. It's a start. We'll see if she deposits the rest of what she owes. He hesitated. Does this mean you won't press charges? If she returns everything or pays me back by tomorrow, no, I won't press charges. I met his eyes. But this doesn't fix everything. James, your mother and I need to have clear boundaries going forward. I know, he said, and I'll help with that. I promise. As we finished cataloging the returned items, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Vindication that Eleanor had backed down, sadness for the family turmoil, and a quiet pride in myself for standing firm. This wasn't the outcome I would have chosen, but perhaps it was the one we needed. A reset, a chance to rebuild our relationship with Eleanor on more honest terms. That night, I slept better than I had in days, curled against James's warm back. Whatever came next, we would face it together. And for the first time since our wedding day, I truly believed that. Friday morning, I woke to an email notification. Eleanor had transferred $4,817.24 to my account, the exact amount missing from the returned items. No message, no apology, just the cold transaction. I showed it to James over breakfast. She did it, he said, relief evident in his voice. It's over. The financial part is over, I corrected him gently. But we still need to figure out what happens next. With your family, with us. He nodded, stirring his coffee absently. Mom's hosting the Gardeners Association Gala next weekend. She's been planning it for months. Maybe we could go? Start rebuilding? I considered it. The gala was Eleanor's crown jewel, the social event she used to showcase her status in Boston society. Her inviting us would be a peace offering of sorts, but I wasn't sure I was ready to accept it. Let me think about it, I said finally. At work that day, I found it hard to concentrate. The Eleanor situation had consumed my thoughts for nearly a week, and now that it was resolved, at least on paper, I felt strangely adrift. My boss, Marjorie, noticed my distraction during our weekly check-in. You seem miles away, she remarked. Everything all right at home? I hadn't told anyone at Beacon Publishing about the situation. It felt too personal, too uncomfortable. But Marjorie had been my mentor since I'd started as an assistant editor 5 years ago. If anyone would understand, it was her. Family drama, I admitted. My mother-in-law and I had a disagreement. Marjorie's eyebrows rose. Must have been quite the disagreement. You've been off your game all week. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything. The credit card, the public humiliation, the legal threats. Marjorie listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from surprise to indignation on my behalf. Well, she said when I finished, I always thought you were level-headed, Emma. Now I know you're steel-spined as well. I don't feel steel-spined, I admitted. I feel exhausted. Of course you do. Setting boundaries is emotionally draining, especially with family, but it's necessary. She leaned forward. You know, we have that senior editor position opening up next month. Lawrence is retiring. I blinked at the sudden change of subject. Yes, I'd heard rumors. I've been watching you handle the Williams project, the way you negotiate with difficult authors, manage complex schedules, maintain quality under pressure. It's impressive. But this situation with your mother-in-law, it tells me something else about you. What's that? That you can handle conflict, that you don't back down when it matters. That's exactly what we need in senior leadership. She smiled. I'm recommending you for the position, Emma. The decision won't be made for another few weeks, but I wanted you to know. I left her office, in a daze. Senior editor was a significant promotion. More money, more responsibility, more prestige. It was a position I'd been working toward for years, but hadn't expected to be considered for so soon. When I got home that evening, I found James in the kitchen making dinner, a rare occurrence that usually indicated he had news or was trying to soften me up for something. Pasta primavera, he announced as I set my bag down, and that sourdough bread you like from Clear Flour Bakery. What's the occasion? I asked, washing my hands at the sink. He handed me a glass of wine. I spoke to my mother today. I took a larger sip than I'd intended. And she apologized. Sort of. He stirred the vegetables in the pan. In her own way. You know how she is. I do, I said dryly. What exactly did this sort of apology entail? She invited us to the gala, said it would mean a lot to her if we came, that she values family above all else. He glanced at me. She also said she's reimbursed you for everything. She has, I confirmed. But an invitation isn't an apology. James, he sighed. I know, but it's a step. For my mother, it's a huge step. I leaned against the counter, thinking. If we go, there need to be ground rules. I won't be ambushed or humiliated again. Absolutely, he agreed quickly. I've already told her that things have to change. That if she wants us in her life, she needs to respect you, respect our marriage. And what did she say to that? He hesitated. She didn't exactly say anything, but she didn't argue, which for Mom is practically surrendering. I couldn't help but laugh at that. Well, it's something. I took another sip of wine. Actually, I have some news too. Marjorie is recommending me for the senior editor position. James's face lit up. Emma, that's fantastic. You've been working toward this for years. It's not a done deal yet, I cautioned. But it's promising. He pulled me into a hug, nearly spilling my wine. I'm so proud of you. We should celebrate. Let's wait until it's official, I said, but I was smiling too. Later that night, as we lay in bed, James turned to me in the darkness. You know what I realized this week? He said quietly. What's that? How much I've let my family shape who I am, how I think, even when it wasn't healthy. His hand found mine under the covers. Watching you stand up to my mother made me see how much I've enabled her behavior over the years, not just toward you, but toward everyone. I squeezed his hand. It's hard to break patterns you've known your whole life, but not impossible, he replied. You showed me that. The following weekend, we attended Eleanor's gala. I wore a simple black dress, elegant but understated, and steeled myself for whatever might come. The venue was the Boston Athenaeum, its marble halls and grand staircases the perfect backdrop for Eleanor's carefully orchestrated social spectacle. She greeted us at the entrance, immaculate in midnight blue silk, her face a careful mask of social graciousness. James, Emma, I'm so glad you could make it. Her eyes lingered on me, assessing. Emma, you look... well, thank you, Eleanor. I replied with equal politeness. The event looks wonderful. You must have worked very hard. A flash of surprise crossed her face at my compliment. She nodded stiffly. Yes, well, these things don't organize themselves. As she turned to greet other guests, James squeezed my hand. So far, so good, he whispered. Throughout the evening, I watched Eleanor work the room with practiced ease. To anyone who didn't know better, she was the consummate hostess, the respected matriarch of a distinguished Boston family. But I noticed things others might miss, the way certain guests gave her a slightly wider berth than before, the briefer handshakes, the polite but cooler smiles. Caroline sidled up to me at the bar, her smile sharp as a knife. Having fun playing dress-up in our world, Emma? I accepted my champagne from the bartender. I'm having a lovely evening, thank you. The Athenaeum is beautiful, isn't it? Though I've always preferred the more intimate setting of their rare books room for events. Her smirk faltered. She hadn't expected me to be familiar with the venue. I hear Mom's biggest donors backed out at the last minute, she continued, changing tactics. Such a shame. Apparently word's been going around about some unpleasantness in the family. I maintained my pleasant expression. Every family has its challenges, Caroline. What matters is how we handle them." Before she could respond, Marjorie appeared at my elbow. "Emma, I didn't expect to see you here." She glanced at Caroline. "And you must be Caroline Preston," she replied automatically, extending her hand. "Eleanor's daughter. Marjorie Chen, editorial director at Beacon Publishing." Marjorie shook her hand briefly before turning back to me. "Emma, I just got a text from Berkowitz. They've approved the promotion. It's official as of Monday." Joy burst through me like a sudden sunrise. "Really? Thank you, Marjorie. This means everything." "You earned it," she said firmly. "Now, introduce me to your husband. I want to congratulate him on having the smartest senior editor in Boston publishing for a wife." As Marjorie and I walked away, I caught sight of Caroline's stunned expression. It was petty, perhaps, but deeply satisfying. James was thrilled about the promotion, insisting on introducing me to everyone as my wife, the new senior editor at Beacon. His genuine pride in my accomplishment warmed me more than the champagne. Later, as the evening wound down, I found myself face to face with Eleanor in a quiet corner of the library. She looked tired beneath her perfect makeup, the weight of the gala, and perhaps the events of the past week, showing in the subtle slump of her shoulders. "Congratulations on your promotion," she said stiffly. "James tells me it's quite an achievement." "Thank you," I replied. "It is." We stood in awkward silence for a moment, years of tension stretched between us like a taut wire. "I want you to know," she said finally, her voice low, "that I've spoken to the board about the Hunter Foundation scholarship, the one for first-generation college students. I've increased my annual contribution." It was as close to an apology as Eleanor Preston would ever come, not a direct acknowledgement of what she'd done, but a small gesture toward recognizing my background without the usual disdain. "That's very generous," I said carefully. "Education changed my life. It will change others too." She nodded once, sharply, then glanced around the room. "I should check on the dessert table. The caterers always try to remove it too early." As she walked away, I felt a strange sense of closure. Not forgiveness, I wasn't there yet, but perhaps the beginning of a new chapter. One where Eleanor and I understood each other better, even if we would never be close. James found me a few minutes later. "Everything okay? I saw you talking to Mom." "Yes," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "Everything's okay." Over the following months, things shifted subtly in our family dynamic. Eleanor maintained a polite distance, no longer attempting to insert herself into every aspect of our lives. James grew more confident in setting boundaries with both his mother and sister. We attended family dinners monthly, not weekly, and I found I could tolerate them when they weren't forced upon me. My promotion brought new challenges and rewards. The additional income allowed us to start looking at houses outside the city, a dream we'd put off due to Boston's astronomical real estate prices. James supported me through late nights and weekend work, just as I'd always supported his career ambitions. 6 months after the credit card incident, we found ourselves at another Preston family event, Richard's 65th birthday. As I watched, Eleanor from across the room, holding court with her social circle, I realized something had changed in how I saw her. Not just as an adversary or an obstacle, but as a complicated woman shaped by her own upbringing, her own fears and insecurities. I would never like Eleanor Preston. I would never fully trust her, but I understood her better now. Her desperate grip on social status, her fear of losing relevance, her inability to see beyond the narrow confines of her world. And in understanding her, I found I could pity her, just a little. That evening, as James and I walked home along the Charles River, the setting sun painting the water gold, he took my hand. "You know what I was thinking today? Watching you and Mom in the same room without World War III breaking out?" "What's that?" I asked, smiling at his teasing tone. "That sometimes the strongest families aren't the ones you're born into, but the Ones you build yourself. The ones based on respect and honesty, not obligation. I leaned my head against his shoulder as we walked. I like the family we're building. Me too, he said softly. Me too. The city stretched before us, familiar, yet full of new possibilities. I thought about how far we'd come since that Sunday brunch 6 months ago. The pain, the confrontations, the difficult conversations, but also the growth, the strengthened bond between James and me, the newfound confidence in myself. Eleanor had tried to diminish me, to put me in my place. Instead, she'd forced me to claim my power, to stand firm in my worth. In trying to break me, she'd made me stronger. It wasn't the lesson she'd intended to teach, but it was the one I'd learned. Nonetheless, and for that, ironically, I was almost grateful.